This morning I'm reading in Matthew chapter 20, and there's this interesting series of events that happens in the life of Jesus. Matthew chapter 20 begins verse 1, Jesus telling the parable of the workers in the vineyard. This owner of the vineyard, Jesus says, goes out and he finds some men not working. Now it's about 6 in the morning. And so the owner of the vineyard says to these men, if you come and work in my vineyard, I will pay you a denarius for your day of work. The owner of the vineyard then goes out at about 9 in the morning and he sees some other men not working and he tells them too, if you come and work in my vineyard, I will give you a denarius for your day of work. The owner of the vineyard then goes out at about noon and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and says the same thing. If you come and work in my vineyard, I will give you a denarius for your day of work. Now at about 6 in the evening, all the work is done. The workers are gathering in and they're ready to get paid. So the owner of the vineyard says, line them up, those who were hired last first, and then those that were hired first, we will pay them last. And so as the men come through the line, the owner of the vineyard gives them each a denarius for their day of work. Those that were hired only did 3 hours of work, they get a denarius. Those that were hired very early in the morning and did 12 hours of work, they too only get a denarius. And so they begin to complain. It's not fair. See, we put in so much more time, so much more work. It's not fair. And the owner of the vineyard says, now wait, why are you upset? Because I'm generous with my money. Did I not keep my word to you? Did I not promise you a denarius? And I am paying you a denarius. And the point of this parable, Jesus says, is that the last will be first and the first will be last. Just following this, then Jesus begins to walk toward Jerusalem with his disciples, and he begins to reveal to them some of the truth of his life, how he is very soon going to be arrested, how he's going to be convicted, condemned to death on a cross, how he is going to give his life. But all of this is lost on the disciples. See, because very soon the mother of 2 of Jesus' disciples approached Jesus. And she says, hey, here's what I want you to do for me. I'd like you to see that my 2 sons get to sit on thrones in glory, one at your right hand, one at your left hand. Jesus explains to her that it's not for him to decide who sits on his right, who sits on his left, that those seats have already been prepared well beforehand. But the rest of the disciples, the other 10, they hear word of what this mother has asked, what these 2 sons of hers have requested of Jesus. So they begin to get angry, indignant toward the 2 brothers. And Jesus kind of calms them down, and he says to them, you're concentrating on the wrong thing. You're focused over here on what's going to happen to you, what's going to, what these 2 brothers rather have asked. He is kind of bringing them back to the parable where the first will be last and the last will be first. And he's reminding them of all these things. He said, don't get distracted by some of these other things. Don't get distracted about where you're going to sit in glory. Don't get distracted by what other people are requesting of me. Don't get angry at other people. Just stay focused on me. Stay focused on what I'm calling you to, what I have equipped you for. See, keep in mind that Jesus had just told them and revealed to them what is going to happen to him, what the price of his life will bring to them, but they missed all of that. And they continued to walk as Jesus is talking to them, kind of calming them down and trying to teach them some of this truth. And as they're walking, 2 men who were blind, they begin to call out for Jesus. The crowd tries to quiet them down from calling out for Jesus, but he turns to these 2 men, Jesus, and he looks at them and he says, what is it that you want? And they say, we want to see. We're blind. We want to see. And at that moment, Jesus heals them. Now, I share all this, and the interesting thing that I found in Matthew chapter 20 is all related. Jesus begins with this parable. The first will be last, and the last will be first. Directly after that, he reveals the truth of his life and his death on the cross, what it's going to bring for those who follow after him. But that's lost because the disciples are so focused on being first and making sure that they have a place in Jesus' kingdom. Maybe rather than focusing on ourselves, focusing on what Jesus will bring to us and what the blessings that he's pouring down in the here and now, the blessings that he has waiting for us in glory. Maybe we need to be more like these two blind men. And Jesus says to us, what do you want? And maybe our response should more often be, we just want to see. We want to see you, Jesus. We want to see your truth, Jesus. We want to understand your truth, Jesus. We want to be able to discern your truth, Jesus. We want to be able to communicate your truth, Jesus. Jesus says, what is it that you want? And Jesus, I just want to see.